we're going to talk about a new and upcoming data agent for business users.
Anybody can do tech. You need to really change how you architecture your work with LLMs.
Welcome to the Don't Panic, It's Just Data podcast, where we have a conversation with people who are impacting the enterprise tech landscape. My name is Christina Stathopoulos, and I'm going to be your host today. After building out an advanced analytics career in big tech, I am now the founder of Dare to Data, on a mission to help individuals and corporations take the next step in their data and AI journey. And today I have the pleasure of being joined by Pavel Doležal, the CEO and co-founder of Keboola, and we are speaking live from Big Data London 2025. So welcome, Pavel. I'm very excited to have you here, and I'm glad we get to meet and do this in person.
Thank you, Christina. It's a pleasure to be here. And Big Data London is an awesome show, and I always enjoy coming here because you see so many interesting people.
Yeah, I agree. I love being at this event. So in this Big Data London special episode, we're going to talk about a new and upcoming data agent for business users and for developers. But before we get started, could you give us a quick intro? Tell us about you. Tell us about what you and your team do at Keboola.
Yeah, well, this journey to data started for me 30 years ago, actually, when we started to build internet companies like portals, and it was always kind of obvious that data is not new oil, but it's very important, and machine learning models coupled with data are gonna be a big thing. But it was hard for people to unlock that value. So after I built several companies where I addressed that in-house, I decided with my co-founders to actually democratize this power for a lot of people. So our whole premise in Keboola is if you couple data and AI, or machine learning as we used to call it, right? Great things will happen. But it cannot stay in only hands of engineers. We need to democratize it into business departments, because if we keep it just with engineers, there's certain threshold where you can go. So the pipeline of what you can do is limitless if you build it for people in business.
Perfect. Well, I'm excited to get a little bit more into what you all are doing, what you all are up to at Keboola. One theme I've seen prevalent here at Big Data London is that businesses are more ambitious than ever with their data, but there are still barriers to get the most out of it. And you just mentioned about democratizing.
Yeah.
So from your perspective, what do you think is the main challenge modern businesses face with their data assets?
Well, you have to kind of understand that, especially businesses that have been around for 10, 15 years, they would kind of live through several iterations of the infrastructure. So they would start when Oracle and Hadoop was there, then the Redshift and Snowflake would unlock the new possibilities. But also the SaaS, boom means that, now the companies have over 300 sources of data, and they have 80, 50, 90 departments which need to work with the data. So this complexity is very, very hard to handle in such a manner that there is a positive ROI. Because you can do anything with almost any tech, but the business case would be actually positive on the long tail use cases, not the top 5, but another 2,000 use cases. It's very hard. And now we are coming into a next iteration of the infrastructure cycle. We have agents, not only people in business, and our infrastructure needs to adjust to that as well. So it's complex. We thought that the AI is gonna come and kind of handle that complexity for us, but it just created another pile of complexity. So complexity is the problem.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think a lot of people working close with data can relate with this. So you mentioned the challenges around unlocking data across thousands of tables or departments, and the complexity behind this. So how does that complexity affect the way teams work in their day-to-day? And I mean on both sides. You have the business users, and then you have the technical users as well.
It really depends company to company, right? We've seen different approaches where people are like, oh, let's just do it very low level. Let's just build very technical stacks for data and AI. Let's go with Databricks or build it in-house, And it's awesome when you have those hard use cases where you can put a lot of resources into one use case. But then on the other side are people or businesses we have a client in US, Evans Logistics, which they own 80,000 trucks. And until 2 years ago, they were like, oh, just Excel, and we don't want to do the heavy, we don't want to hire 50 engineers, right? So these are two sides of the equation. And what we are trying to do is to bridge that gap, right? So, like enable hardcore technical people to do hardcore things, either within Keboola or, in partnership with other technologies. And then the people who just were used to Excel to kind of like reuse that. And then go and in every business, just like have the data accessible and have the model for it. So but over the years, we've seen people building data vaults, data mesh, but I don't think there is you cannot apply one single concept to every use case and every company. You always have to be pragmatic how you actually build it, because otherwise it's just a concept.
A lot of people, of course, are talking about, generative AI. We haven't gotten into that yet. Generative AI, large language models, LLMs. So I want to connect a little bit to that. Many companies are experimenting with LLMs themselves today. That's not a secret, but making them work reliably on enterprise scale data, that's where the complexity really comes in, right? So from your experience, how do LLMs make execution easier? And then on the other side, where do you think they fall short? Because it's clearly very different when you have a use case, you're applying an LLM to data pipelines which need extreme precision versus something like designing a website.
Yeah, that's we've all read the MIT study which said 95% of POCs actually don't go into production, and that's something we've seen last 24 months, right around. People were experimenting, but the problem was to get the very good precision across all of that complexity, right? And so that's where we started to focus, because like our clients would have, like, for example, 3,000 tables across 85 different business departments. And if you go into one specific table, you can kind of like use any LLM to actually build with that. But if you want to have every department kind of like, access to their share of data products across that, you need to really change how you architecture your work with LLMs. And for that, you need to understand that LLMs thrive on context. That's it. Context is the king. So as much of context you can actually feed to LLM, the better is the outcome. But that's very hard when you have built modern data stack, for example, inside a company, because you have 15 different tools. And how do you get the context from 15 different tools? It's just almost impossible. So this is where our kind of like advantage comes in, because we build Keboola's end-to-end API layer on top of the whole data journey. So like we can feed the context to LLM, like for the specific part of the journey, specific data product, but not only the metadata, we can feed all the events that were happening with the data. We can feed, like the orchestration, debug jobs, literally everything. And then it works better.
Yeah, I'm amazed, because I think we all know how complicated this is to solve. And I also understand that you just announced the Keboola Data Agent, right, here at Big Data London. You've given a talk about it. From what I understand, it builds on Keboola's layers, and it enables both chat for the business users as well as in-platform assistance for developers. So my question for you is, how does this solution bridge the gap between these very different groups? Because you have the business side who wants accessible, actionable insights, and then you have these more technical sides that want precision and governance. Yes. So how does it bridge the gap? And then also, what specific problems does it solve that traditional solutions couldn't?
So throughout our journey of last 10 years, what we start to understand is that we really excel, and the hard problem is not to build specific model or pipeline, but how do you democratize that, across the company? So that's when the data mesh kind of like came in, and Jamax, and stuff. Great concept, but you need to be pragmatic how you apply it, right? So we built our platform around actually some data products, if you will, like a little bit to actually. And so since last 5 years, what people make inside a product, they were able to share as a data product with the whole environment, quantum, you would call it in the data mesh strategy. So that basic governance layer has been there for 5 years for us. So our clients actually use data in 85 departments, for example, in a large bank in Europe. And they just like the engineers prepare the data in kind of like L1 layer. and then they share into L2 layer into virtualized quantum environments. So that was there. And when the LLMs came into play, we started to experiment 3 years ago with how to help the data engineers to build the pipelines. And honestly, it was very hard because like pipelines are deterministic, but LLMs are stochastic in nature. So how do you combine it? So we went through iterations, 3 iterations. We always kind of like, oh, this is it. Now then we threw it away, And then, so like now what actually we do in the platform, we assist the data engineers with the build of the pipeline. And that's within their environment. When you build the pipeline, when you prepare the data, perfect. But then, like we were starting, how do you apply that to the data products and the quantums where businesses actually works, or data marts, if you will, right? And so we took the same data agent and we actually built a different environment for it. It's a chat-like environment which gets a lot of context, from the underlying, and it actually minimizes the context for the data product or the data mart that you actually build in. And because it's easy to provision, it's just like, okay, like we didn't come up with any new methodology how to do it, but as people were provisioning data products, in Quantum, with one click, they get a chat environment with the agent built in. So, by default, the chat has a context, knows what to do, knows where not to go. And we were actually really surprised because like our clients, our users took us this way. When they saw the data agent working for the data engineers, they were like, this is perfect, but we need to put it in that governed data mart, for the business users. And once we started to do that, they started not to only build the pipelines, but they started to actually explore, so the business people started to explore what data they have in there, what is the quality, what they started to ask, questions like, hey, can you build me the dashboards, can you build me insights? And as we progress over the last half of year with our users, this has actually really become a very stable place where the people in business go and they explore the data. But because it's connected with the data engineering layer, it works seamlessly.
Yeah, that's amazing because this is a very big gap usually between the business and the data engineers.
And honestly, we thought that this was already solved, kind of like many companies, but like it was not our first iteration how we want data agent to go. It was for data engineers, but our clients started to pull us that way, the direction, because they said it works perfectly for us in data engineering, but like we would like to provision just part of it for business people. And the big thing was how to provision it, how easily to have, one-click provisioning of the governed separate environment for the business people.
Yeah, that makes sense. And as you continue building on this launch, how do you see the Keboola Data Agent evolving in the coming years? So how do you think it's going to improve software, data engineering, especially with all the other projects you've got going on at Keboola?
There is one thing that we already see, and that's the automations. So, like our mission at the company is to automate every business process with data and AI. And for years, it was like about the data, about AI, but now it's coming together. So what we see, our customers are taking, this direction is they ask the question within the chat with the agent, the business people, and they ask it, like basically before they get to the end of the answer, what we have built with the agent underneath that. We have actually built all the meta layers, we've qualified the data, they check the data, we have built the pipeline, we have all the layers, of the context, right? And if you take this is a very good description for the agent. So what people are asking for is like, hey, we ask the question, you have all the context for it, can you press automate? And so this is where we are going. We are going from question to automation within one environment with the business people. And I'm very excited about that. In the same time, we are, like doing a lot of R&D, how to kind of like pair the stochastic models into deterministic pipelines. And we are actually launching an open source, today, which kind of like handles that. We call it Osiris. And basically you give it a question, and it's a command line tool for engineers. And it builds a manifesto, it builds a runner, and together kind of pulls in parts of the LLMs And the result is kind of like a pipeline, data pipeline running in E2B sandbox. And I think it's a very cool technology. It's not a product for end users, but that's why we open source it.
Very nice. And I'm going to ask you to whip out that crystal ball again, because I want to look at the broader space. Mm-hmm. So how do you foresee large language models, LLMs, agentic systems transforming complete value chains for your clients? And as well, what do you think is the ultimate vision for this technology? And how is it going to affect organizations, the way that they manage, the way that they use their data?
Mm-hmm. So we've had this hypothesis that the agents, we didn't call it agents years ago, but that the agents are actually gonna run the business processes within the company. But what we see now more and more is that people are pulling us the direction, can we actually have agents not only running internal processes, but kind of like doing business with external processes? And that is a very hard problem to solve as well. But if you have the data, it's governed, you have all the pipelines, that is actually very, very interesting. It's not gonna be done in 1 year, but that's the direction we go. First, we're gonna kind of like use the agents and data to automate internal processes. Once we have the agents, they are asking for more data, for more context. And because they work based on contracts, they can do contracts, not only with the internal systems, but they can start searching for the contracts for other agents. And for that, in order to work, there's a lot of work to be done on the platform level, on the infrastructure layer, because agents, for different tasks, they will need different infrastructure. It will need to be provisioned ad hoc, kind of like package into E2B container per job. But it's very exciting direction, I think.
So from our conversation, I've taken quite a few different takeaways around context, around democratization, now automation, agents. But if you could offer one key takeaways for our listeners, for CIOs, CFOs, IT decision makers that are listening in today, what would it be and why?
If you are a CIO and CEO, think about, it's easy. Anybody can do tech nowadays. It's about context, it's about knowing the process and what you want to do. But the technical skills, they just got 100 times easier. So the context and knowing your domain is more important than knowing any IT skill.
Okay, well, everybody heard that, very important. Thank you so much, Pavel, for your time, for joining us today. I appreciate you coming on and sharing all these insights.
Thanks for inviting me.
Of course, for sharing your experience, your insights. I'm excited to go back and enjoy some more Big Data London with you. But in the meantime, thank you to everyone who tuned in today. Thank you for listening. We hope you took a lot away from today's episode. For further information on what we spoke about, head on over to Keboola.com, Keboola.com. We'll be back next week with another episode in our podcast series. And until then, make sure you subscribe to this podcast on all major platforms and follow the conversation on our socials at EM360 Tech, on X and LinkedIn. And for more great daily content, head on over to em360tech.com.